John Wick has become a household name, with it being one of the bigger new franchises of the 2010s. Sequels, game crossovers, and even planned prequel series, to say the least, it has hit the internet by storm, which is odd given its fairly average box office performance. Nonetheless, it struck a chord with lots of people, so today I thought I would take a look at the 4 reasons why a fairly run-of-the-mill and low-budget action film became such a beloved franchise. Before I begin, I thought I'd quickly like to say that there will be spoilers ahead. With that, let's go on to what makes this film so damn cool. Reason number 1 is, well, John Wick. What do characters like John McClane, Indiana Jones, and James Bond have in common? They're all really engaging protagonists. For starters, John Wick is clearly identified as a boogeyman.
We call him Baba Yaga.
Which basically tells us that this character is the best at what he's doing, which makes him actually a lot more interesting to follow. The fact that he is the best just inherently makes us more interested and excited to see him during his action sequences, but as well as that, there is a more important thing with John Wick. He is vulnerable. He goes through emotional and physical trauma several times. This guy is not invincible. He can get hurt, he can lose fights, and that makes him even more entertaining, because not only is John Wick the best, but he's also someone that we know can lose a fight, which personally invests us even more. But even better than that, he is a driven protagonist. We completely understand why John Wick does what he does in this film. He has lost his wife due to cancer, he's lost his dog, he's lost his home, he's lost pretty much everything around him. And because of that, we completely understand what he's going through and we relate to him. Furthermore than that, we hate the villains as much as he does. No disrespect meant to the actors, but the villains are hateable, which to be honest means that they've done a pretty good job. We want to see John Wick get his own back, we want to see him succeed, which is why he is such an exciting protagonist to follow. If you have a main character as strong as John Wick, whose motivations make as much sense as he does, and as well as that you establish that he is clearly the best, but he still has his vulnerabilities, that makes him such an exciting protagonist to follow, and because of that investment, the film is all the more fun with it. Number 2, the world is really interesting. A secret society of underground assassins is a really cool idea, and it's pretty well thought out with rules, structure, and history all put in there without resulting in any mass amounts of exposition. This benefits the experience so much as it plays off of the plot in a much more exciting manner, and one that you as a general rule can't predict. This is where we of course go into our characters, because this movie has a great supporting cast. Each one of them is quite well portrayed, and they all have different relations to John, and the ways that they bounce off of each other is pretty fun as well. Plus the dialogue allows these characters to pretty quickly establish what kind of relation they have to John, and it's glad to see that they're always able to establish different types of histories without it ever being overbearing. The standouts, of course, are Ian McShane, who is just awesome in the role, and also Adrianne Palicki, who they don't go down the predictable route of with a femme fatale, which is something I really appreciated. Lastly, let's talk about the villains, because Michael Nyqvist does a really good job here, and Alfie Allen I think is also really good as well. In terms of what their motivations are, Alfie Allen is basically just an asshole who's in it for survival. Meanwhile, his father is obviously in it for revenge and protection of his own son. Ultimately, they hold money and influence over John Wick, which is something that is able to test him several times in the film, which means that not only does John Wick have something over them, but they have something over him. And in addition, we completely get why he wants to go after them and why they want to go after him. This kind of world building is really important, and it's actually really hard to do in a small film like this. This whole world and set of character interactions is built up really organically without slugging down the film at all, and because of that I've got to give it a crazy amount of credit. It's not just the characters that keep us invested in this story, but also this world. This film wouldn't have a massive franchise and set of sequels behind it if it wasn't for the characters in the world driving it forward, and because of that this film deserves a hell of a lot of credit. Number 3, the action sequences are badass. How often are action sequences shot this cleanly? For reference, John Wick was shot by ex-stuntmen, and because of this, they clearly have a very good understanding of how to shoot your action sequences. You can see just how good and well thought out all the choreography in this sequence is, and it is shot with fantastic direction and camera work and lighting. Although, to be fair, a lot of this isn't unique to just the action scenes, but it's definitely the action sequences where this shines. I also want to talk about the editing, because it's not the quick cut shaky cam rubbish that we get used to on a regular basis. There are rarely any cuts in these action sequences, and that's because the directors want to fully show off that their stuntmen have spent so much time training for these sequences. And the biggest disrespect you can give to these stuntmen is by masking all of their work with shoddy camera work and editing. So it's really great to see this all done so smoothly and cleanly. As a general rule, I think that all of the set pieces are really well designed. I think that the effects are really solid in this movie. And the other thing I want to say is that Keanu Reeves is a really good physical actor. And by that I mean he always commits to his action sequences. You can really see it here. Keanu Reeves is very committed to matching in with all of the stunt work going on here, and the directors are very committed to showing that on camera. And because they put so much thought and effort into these action sequences, they just have that extra punch. They also try and separate these sequences apart from each other, which is also really helpful in films like this. I mean, yeah, this is just some of the best action that we've seen in all of cinema for the whole of the 2010s. It's phenomenal. And lastly, we have the script. Now, the script usually makes or breaks a film, and unfortunately, in John Wick's case, the plot is very by the numbers. However, what saves the plot of this film so very much is the fact that it doesn't try to be anything more than what it already was. This film is very fast and well paced. It organically builds the world into its structure, and it has some great snappy dialogue that gets us invested in our characters and our world without filling us with too much exposition. This film's short, which means that it doesn't waste much time. It doesn't needlessly complicate itself with any subplots that detract from the main plot itself. It doesn't give us some unnecessary romance story in there that just doesn't feel right. It cuts straight to the chase with its revenge plot, and I've got to give it respect for that. The film ends very neatly, which definitively closes it off, and I honestly find that to be more satisfying. It was trying to tell its one story, and it did its one job. We had a very fun ride on the way there, but ultimately the script only had us go there in a very clear direction. This film is also very grounded, which is something that I feel like progressively the franchise has been walking away from, but I like how grimy and grounded this film feels. There are some moments of humour, obviously, that work in varying degrees, but for the most part this keeps it quite bloody and down to earth, which works a lot with getting us invested in our characters. Because of this, in terms of consequences and realism, it helps us as well. John Wick himself gets hurt several times, and several main characters will just die. And I think that actually sets up some really good consequence and some great tension for our characters. If anyone can die, then that makes things inherently more interesting. And yet again, it adds to this world. Like I said, it's a very by-the-numbers revenge story, but it keeps itself simple and just plays off of its fast momentum. It doesn't waste our time, like I said, and that's something that I've got to respect. It took the ideas and it went straight for them head first. So those are the main 4 reasons why I think John Wick succeeded at being an action film. However, I do have a couple of other final little notes that didn't quite fit in. For starters, I think Keanu Reeves is a huge part of why this film is successful. And I honestly think this is one of the best performances he has ever given. In addition to that, I think the music is pretty solid, and I know it's a minor thing, but I also really like the sound editing. So yeah, as you might know, I really like this film. No, it's not perfect. In fact, I have several problems with the script. However, a lot of them are just related to scale, so I can't hugely fault the film for it. Ultimately, this had the potential to just be a very forgettable and run-of-the-mill action film. However, in the end, the technical aspects and total commitment from the crew set it apart as something so much more than we all thought it was going to be, and for that I have to give this film credit. John Wick is a real achievement in terms of action filmmaking, and for that I think it has the potential to become a true action classic. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, like and comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.